This is CJ Baker, and every day I listen to a different randomly generated album that appears in the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. So I just finished my 10th week, and just like I have in previous weeks, I'm releasing my weekly recap video. Afterwards, I'll give my observations for the week, my updated rankings, and we'll answer the question: do the albums I listened to this week, do they belong in the book 1001 albums you must hear before you die? So if you want me to keep making these videos, please make sure that you like and subscribe. And please enjoy. Today's randomly generated album is Station to Station by David Bowie, released in 1976. So this was during David Bowie's thin white Duke phase. And one thing that David Bowie was known for was constantly reinventing himself. So I am a David Bowie fan, and we'll get into this specific album. It opens really strong with the title track, Station to Station, which is a little over 10 minutes long. And I'm not always a fan of long songs, but in this case, the tune is fairly epic. It's my favorite song on the album. And also concerning the length of the songs, there's only 6 tracks on the album over the course of 38 minutes. But yeah, this song, with the reference to the return of the thin white Duke, it almost makes it a theme song of the persona. And there is some cinematic elements to the song that I like. And I also like the pulsating beat that takes place through much of the song. So yeah, a really strong way to open the album. The next track is Golden Years, which is by far the most well-known song on the album. And it's not necessarily one of my favorite Bowie songs, but I don't hate the tune, and I can't deny that it's catchy. So the next 3 songs on the album, Word on a Wing, TVC 15, and Stay, are all solid tunes. And Stay in particular is just really funky, so I do dig the funky vibe of the song. And then it closes with the cover of Wild is the Wind, which was originally recorded by Johnny Mathis, but the song is widely associated with Nina Simone, and Bowie considered it as a homage to Simone. Just like Bowie, I am a huge fan of Nina Simone, and I love Nina Simone's version, but if I'm being honest, I'm not particularly a fan of Bowie's version. I realize I'm in the minority here. I can't even articulate why, because he sings it well. Maybe it's just simply a matter of the fact that I don't really want Bowie sounding like anyone else other than Bowie. But because I don't particularly like his version and it's the last song on the album, it does end the album on a bit of a weak note. But that being said, I understand the logic in selecting this song as a closing track. So yeah, it's not necessarily my favorite David Bowie album. And eventually I know with the random generator, we'll probably get to the Bowie albums that I do like more. But it's still a really solid album, and I give it 4 stars. Today's randomly generated album is Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones, released 1971. So this is the 4th randomly generated Stones album. And out of the 4 albums I listened to so far, this is my favorite. I know that there will be at least one more Stones album in the random generator that I also really like as well. So once I re-listen to that album, it'll probably be a coin toss. But what I will say, comparing this album to the 69 album, Let It Bleed. Let It Bleed had higher highs, especially with the fantastic bookends of my all-time favorite Rolling Stones song, Give Me Shelter, and the absolute masterpiece of You Can't Always Get What You Want. But overall, this album's just way more consistent It also has really strong bookends. Like it opens with Brown Sugar, which is a banger, and it closes with the gorgeous tune Moonlight Mile, which is also a really powerful way to close the album. So a couple of my favorite songs on the album happen to be their more country influenced tunes. I'm not always a big fan of the Rolling Stones doing country. Like, for example, my least favorite track on Let It Bleed was the absolutely horrendous Country Honk, which was a precursor to Honky Tonk Woman, which I'm not particularly a fan of either. But Wild Horses, absolutely gorgeous tune. And interestingly enough, the first recorded version of Wild Horses was by the Flying Burrito Brothers. It appeared on their 1970 album, Burrito Deluxe. So Graham Parsons of the Burrito Brothers heard a demo version of the song and asked if they could record it. And Mick and Keith agreed to it, as long as it wasn't released as a single and it was just an album track. And the Burrito Brothers version is really gorgeous as well. The other country influenced tune is Dead Flowers, which is just a very sarcastic, bitter breakup tune. And basically in the song, Jago's being a petty Betty, but I just really get a kick out of the tune. And a couple of the other highlights, Can't You Hear Me Knocking, definite banger. And then also a fan of Sister Morphine, which is a very chilling tune about the dark side of being a drug addict. It was co-written by Marianne Faithfull, who's also recorded her own version prior to the Stones releasing theirs. So I also am a fan of Faithfull's version as well. Really strong album. All cure, no fill. Easy 5 stars. So today's randomly generated album is Club Classics Volume 1 by Soul to Soul, released in 1989. So one of the members of Soul to Soul, Nelly Hooper, he's actually produced a number of albums that I really like. Like, for example, he produced the album Protection by Massive Attack. He produced Debut by Bjork, which technically wasn't a debut. And he's also produced one of my all-time favorite albums, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got by Sinead O'Connell. So yeah, I'll give him props as a producer. But what about this album? So the album does feature probably their 2 most well-known hits. It opens with Keep On Moving. It also features Back to Life, Back to Life, Back to Reality. So yeah, I don't hate either of those songs. They're perfectly good songs. My favorite song on the album is Holding On. So that song's a banger. I like the vibe of the music. And I also appreciate the socially aware lyrics and the positive message. As far as the rest of the album goes, there's aspects of it I enjoy, and I do like some of the jazzy elements of the music. One thing I will say, for an album that calls itself Club Classics, I do think at times the album could go a little bit harder. And I think as far as the idea of being like an album of club bangers, I think some of the songs are just a bit too mid-tempo, and for my personal taste, do seem to be a little bit bland. But there's nothing on the album that I hate, so it's a decent enough listening experience. So I will give it 3.5 stars and keep on moving, keep on moving. Today's randomly generated album is Two Dancers by Wild Beast, released in 2009. So this is a UK indie band. And I think there's another example of an album that benefits from the fact that the book, 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die, was published in the UK. I'm not sure it would have made it in the book otherwise. We'll get right into the album. I just want to start off by discussing the vocalist, Hayden Four. And he's someone I'd say I'm a bit on the fence about. I do think he has a good voice, but at times I find the falsetto a little bit annoying, and the vocals are just a bit too theatrical for my personal taste. So I do think it works on certain tracks, but other tracks on the album, it just doesn't work for me. Like, for example, I'm not particularly into the opening track, the fun powder plot, and a lot of that is the vocals. But I do think the vocals work really well with the next two tracks, Hootin' and Howling and All the King's Men. So those are by far the best two songs on the album. And All the King's Men in particular is a definite banger. But from there, like I said, these are by far the two best songs. So the album peaks early. So the rest of the songs on the album are kind of just okay for me. Like some of the songs, I have those minor issues with the vocals that I already mentioned. But for the most part, I like the album musically. So I like the musical vibe. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say about the album. And like I said, I'm not sure if it necessarily deserves to be in the book, but I didn't hate it. So I'll give it 3.5 stars. Today's randomly generated album is the 1995 self-titled debut by Garbage. And Garbage is a band I experienced in real time. Like, for example, the three most well-known tunes on the album, Only Happy When It Rains, Stupid Girl, and to a lesser extent, Queer. All three of those songs got decent airplay on the Toronto alternative rock station 102.1 The Edge, and the videos got decent rotation on Much Music. And as far as those three songs go, they're all perfectly fine. They're kind of catchy. Probably the three best songs on the album. As far as the other songs go, there's nothing I particularly love, nothing I particularly hate. I do enjoy Shirley Manson's vocals, and I like her vibe. Musically, it's very competent. Production's fairly polished, almost too polished. But concerning production, one of the band members was Butch Vig. And as a producer, he produced a number of albums I love. And those albums include Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins, very definitive album of my youth. And he produced Nevermind by Nirvana, which is probably by far the most important album in terms of my musical development. So yeah, I give him props as a producer. And a number of those albums that he produced, I mean, quite frankly, to me, are just musically more interesting than anything he did with Garbage. But I don't hate this album. Like the album, like I said, it's fine. Don't love it. Don't hate it. Give it 3.5 stars. Well, I'm probably never going to talk about it again. Today's randomly generated album is Cupid and Psyche 85 by Scritti Politti. So this is the sophomore album of the UK synth pop band. It basically started off as a politically left-leaning post-punk band, but by the time that they were signed to a major label and released their debut album, they totally abandoned that approach and they adopted more of a mainstream pop sound. The opening track, the word girl, it basically features lightweight, watered down reggae. Sounds really dated, and it's a pretty terrible tune, but unfortunately, it's by far the best song on the album. So the album opens on a bad note and it closes on an even worse note. Like the closing track, Hypnotized, features a redated 80s hip hop sound. Pretty horrendous, and it might be the worst song on the album. Say it might be the worst song because there's a number of contenders. Like the album, it's just absolutely garbage. I hate everything on the album. It's incredibly dated, incredibly watered down. And just to highlight that, I just want to share a couple of the reviews on the album. Yeah, so one of the reviews is, if Ram are a bit too hardcore for you, this will be right up your street. And then the other review, it says, if you castrated George Michael and made him sing against his will, he would still sound better than this group. So yeah, I'm not really a big Ram fan, but at least with Ram, I would have to begrudgingly acknowledge that they have a couple of songs that are kind of catchy. And the fact is, the lead vocalist of Scritti, Politti, Green Side, he's no George Michaels. And the fact is, he's also no Andrew Ridgeley. Like, I would rather even listen to a band of like 5 Andrew Ridgeleys than listen to this. So, yeah, out of every single album I've listened to so far since I started this exercise, this is by far the absolute worst. I hate this album. 1 star. I'm never gonna listen to it again. Today's randomly generated album is Listen Without Prejudice, Volume 1, the sophomore solo album by George Michael, released in 1990. So this is the follow-up to his 1987 debut album, Faith, which was really massive. Like the vast majority of the songs on Faith were big hits. So the album was definitely very ubiquitous. As far as this album goes, Michael made a conscious effort of wanting a more serious sound. And he even had to butt heads with the record company in order to record and release this album. So the first 2 songs on the album are also the 2 most well-known songs on the album, and are the 2 songs that I was familiar with ahead of time. So it opens with Praying for Time, which I like the socially conscious lyrics of the tune. I find the song a little bit too AC for my personal taste, but I do find that emotionally it is an impactful song, so I mostly like the tune. The second song on the album is Freedom 90, which is a banger. It's probably by far the best song on the album. Couple of other songs I do want to mention on the album. We got Cowboys and Angels, which I like the jazziness of the tune, but I do find the song to be a bit too long. The other song I want to mention is Mother's Pride. I do like the socially awareness of that song, and I like the anti-war message of the tune. The only thing I would say is it has a similar musical arrangement to Praying for Time, so I think it may have benefit for a slightly different musical arrangement. As far as the other songs on the album goes, musically, it's just not really my thing, which is fine. I don't expect every single album ever made to be made for me. Obviously, that's just unrealistic. And one thing I will say is I have a lot of respect for George Michael for making a conscious effort to show artistic maturity. And I really like the fact that he made the album he wanted to make, not concerned about whether or not it would do well commercially. He wasn't concerned about the backlash, and he was even willing to butt heads with the record company. So I give him a lot of props for that. So yeah, I didn't hate the album. I give it 3.5 stars. So this concludes the recap. Soulball was an okay week. There was a new 5-star album, a 4-star album, 3.5 star albums. And then we had a 1-star album, so we have a new least favorite album. So out of all the weeks so far, this has probably been the weakest. But we'll now look at the updated rankings. Like we mentioned, we got the new 5-star album, the Rolling Stones Sticky Fingers. So that's now in the number 12 spot. We'll just keep scrolling here. Yeah, so we got the 4-star album, David Bowie. We'll just keep scrolling here. Yeah, Garbage, 3.5. And then we got 3 other 3.5 albums. So we got Wild Beast. Then we got George Michael and Soul to Soul. Then we got The Change at the bottom. We got the brand new 1-star album, Scritti, Politti, Cupid and Psyche 85, 1 star. Absolutely hated that album. So that's the updated rankings. And then, of course, you can let me know in the comments what you think of my rankings. But now, we're going to ask the question we asked every week. Do these albums deserve to be in the book 1001 albums you must hear before you die? And as we say every week, that's obviously hyperbole. But the real question is, are these essential, influential, important albums? So there's a few albums this week I would question their inclusion. Initially, my immediate one I was thinking was Scritti, Politti, because that's an absolute horrendous album. I hate it. It's absolute garbage. But when I researched it a bit, there's a decent number of artists that have cited the band as an influence. And this is widely considered to be the most important album, or at least the best album. And one of those artists, like it includes artists that I'm a fan of, like for example, Dirty Projectors are fans of Scritti Politti. So it needs to be acknowledged that just because I hate the album doesn't automatically mean it's not an important album and doesn't deserve to be in the book. Other albums, initially I kind of crushed in garbage because I think there's a whole slew of 90s alternative bands and 90s alternative albums that are more important than their debut. But I also can kind of see the influence, especially in connection with Shirley Manson as a vocalist. And then other albums I kind of crushed in the Wild Beast album. I think there's a whole slew of albums, like indie rock albums from the 2000s that are more notable. And I think it is an example of an album that's mainly in there because of the UK bias. And also, I'm not entirely sure about the inclusion of Soul to Soul. Like, I think there's other soul albums and other, like, dance music albums that are more notable and more important. But yeah, those are some albums that I might question this week. So, what did you think of my reviews this week? Let me know in the comments. And if you want me to keep making these videos, please like and subscribe. And you can also check out my website, ongoinghistoryofprotestsongs.com. Thanks for watching, and please stay safe.